Dr. Oz is currently in charge of $500 billion of American healthcare spending, and his entire career started with him standing in front of the United States Senate defending the honor of a coffee bean, not a vaccine, not a surgical technique, a bean. Green, unroasted, and apparently capable, according to the Dr. Oz show, of melting fat directly off your body while you did nothing else differently with your life. The senator across from him had spent the morning losing her patience and most of her...
You must be pretty busy these days.
Yeah, we are.
It's okay?
...her faith in the medical profession. And somewhere in the middle of it all, the man Oprah Winfrey herself, crowned America's doctor, found himself explaining with a straight face that you couldn't just smear the stuff on a kielbasa and expect results.
And trank, and when you get that concoction, you can go berserk.
Is that what you're taking?
That sentence happened, on the record, under oath, more or less. This is the story of Dr. Mehmet Oz, the host of the Dr. Oz show, a man who trained as one of the most accomplished cardiothoracic surgeons of his generation, performed actual heart transplants, and then somehow ended up best known for raspberry ketones, a misidentified grocery store, and a chorus of senators wondering aloud why a man with this much talent kept insisting that magic was real. He had the credentials of a genius and the instincts of a late-night infomercial. So how exactly does America's doctor go from saving lives in an operating room—
It's been going on for over 3 decades. That's why it's so hard to try to conquer this area—
to nearly getting heckled out of a Senate hearing room over Garcinia, Cambodia? Buckle up, it gets so much worse. Long before the coffee bean incident, Mehmet Oz was, by every reasonable account, doing exactly what he was supposed to be doing. He trained at Harvard, picked up an MBA from Wharton almost as a hobby, and became a genuinely respected cardiothoracic surgeon at Columbia, the kind of doctor other doctors actually wanted operating on them. In 2003, in what felt at the time like a minor footnote, he hosted a short-lived Discovery Health show called Second Opinion. It lasted 5 episodes. Its real legacy wasn't the content. It was the guest list, because one of those guests was Oprah Winfrey.
That's right.
Oh, it gets...
Yeah, but these are ulcers, and these things are, they're doing the same thing on the inside.
Winfrey, at the absolute peak of her cultural authority, did not hand out endorsements lightly. She handed out destinies. Over the next 5 years, Oz became her go-to health expert, appearing on her show more than 50 times.
Water, but you gotta drink it. How you been?
Hey, my friend. Been a while.
This guy I trust.
Charming a daytime audience with the kind of folksy confidence that made gallbladders sound interesting. Winfrey eventually gave him a nickname that would define the next 2 decades of his life: America's Doctor.
And that, I don't get how, but it's crazy now here.
So why are they all doing that? What do you think? What's motivating them?
Then, in September 2009, she did what she did best. She built him an empire of his own. The Dr. Oz show launched into a media landscape practically begging for it. America was deep into an obesity panic, increasingly suspicious of Big Pharma, and newly obsessed with the word wellness, a term so vague it could mean anything from yoga to drinking your own urine. Oz arrived as the perfect synthesis, a Harvard-trained surgeon who spoke the language of alternative medicine fluently enough to make it sound rigorous. The show shattered debut ratings, the kind daytime television hadn't seen in nearly a decade, and within its first year, it had already picked up an Emmy. It was, for a moment, a genuinely good idea executed by a genuinely qualified man, which makes what happened next so much funnier. The cracks didn't start with a scandal. They started with a sales pitch so confident it forgot to check itself.
You doing okay?
I'm trying to be.
How's that? How you trying?
In 2012, Dr. Oz stood in front of his studio audience, gestured at a slide that said no exercise, no diet, no effort, and introduced America to green coffee bean extract, calling it a miracle pill that could burn fat for every body type. He said this the way most people announce a software update: calm, certain, done deal. Within weeks, a Florida company called Pure Green Coffee was running ads built almost entirely out of his footage.
What'd you take?
Huh?
What did you take?
No.
You know this guy?
Promising customers they'd lose 17 pounds and 16% body fat in 22 weeks, based on a study that, it would later turn out, had been quietly funded and manipulated by the very company selling the supplement.
Walking around with no real grounding in their lives. You can see the life has gone out of those beautiful eyes.
That study got retracted. The company got sued by the Federal Trade Commission, and Dr. Oz got a subpoena, or at least the daytime television equivalent of one, an invitation to Capitol Hill.
Just a supply and demand.
We know that. It's basic math. As long as it's demand, there's a supply.
Where Senator Claire McCaskill had clearly done more homework on him than most cardiology fellows do on their board exams. The hearing on June 17th, 2014 did not go the way America's doctor was used to things going. McCaskill walked him through Garcinia cambogia, raspberry ketones, and the now infamous coffee bean, one by one, asking him a question that should have been rhetorical, but somehow needed answering out loud. Why would a man with this much credibility keep calling things miracles when he knew, in his own words, that they often didn't have the scientific muster to back it up? He admitted his language had been flowery. Flowery is one word for it. Actionable false advertising is another, which is presumably why the phrase Dr. Oz effect got coined that same year to describe what happens when a TV doctor's casual enthusiasm becomes a multi-million-dollar fraud-generating machine almost overnight. If the Senate hearing was an inconvenience, the next blow was a diagnosis. In December of 2014, researchers published a study in the BMJ.
Very far. And people really getting fucked up with it. I see so many people OD off their shit, bro.
That had done something almost insultingly simple. They took 80 medical recommendations straight off his show and checked them against the actual scientific literature. 46% held up. 15% were directly contradicted by existing research. The remaining 39% simply didn't have any evidence either way, meaning more than half the medical advice broadcast daily into millions of living rooms was either wrong or completely made up on the spot. For context, that's a worse hit rate than a coin flip, assuming the coin had gone to medical school and then decided not to use it.
You know where Rock is, right? From there, right down.
What are the few things you got to do?
By April of 2015, the criticism had stopped being academic and started getting personal. 10 physicians, including names from Stanford's Hoover Institution, sent Columbia University a letter that read less like concern and more like an eviction notice, accusing Oz of an egregious lack of integrity by promoting quack treatments and cures in the interest of personal financial gain. Oz did not take this quietly. He devoted an entire episode to calling his critics rent-a-scientists, conveniently pointing out that some of them had their own questionable industry ties, while somehow not addressing the part where independent researchers had already proven his own numbers were bad. Columbia, for its part, responded with a statement so committed to academic freedom that it essentially translated to "not our problem," and let him keep his job.
Take it. They don't take it. So this is not a law enforcement issue at a certain point. It's a mental health issue, right?
The nickname that came out of this entire saga, coined by the website Science-Based Medicine, was brutally efficient: America's Quack. It rhymed, it stuck, it followed him for the next decade. And then just when it seemed like the bottom had been found, 2020 happened.
Deep mental health issues along with substance use. When they're married, that's a dangerous combination.
As COVID-19 spread across the country, Oz appeared on Fox News 21 times in under 2 weeks, pushing hydroxychloroquine as a treatment with the same unshakable confidence he'd once reserved for coffee beans, reportedly advising the White House directly on the matter. Then, on April 16th, during an interview with Sean Hannity, he described reopening schools as an appetizing opportunity, explaining that doing so might only cost the country 2 to 3% in terms of total mortality. Read that sentence again. A man whose entire brand was built on being trusted with human lives had just described a percentage of dead people as a manageable trade-off, live, on national television, in the same tone he used to describe Garcinia cambogia. The internet did not require subtitles to understand what had just happened. Within hours, Dr. Oz was trending for reasons that had nothing to do with weight loss, and by that evening, he'd posted an apology video admitting he'd misspoken, which is the verbal equivalent of duct taping a crack that's already swallowed the whole wall. He would later walk back the hydroxychloroquine endorsement too, once a Veterans Affairs study showed it didn't help and might actually harm patients, conceding on Fox and Friends that we don't know if it worked, a sentence that arrived roughly 2 months and several hundred televised endorsements too late.
Well, she did. I've heard that from numerous people. Rock hears it all the time. They got help right around the corner at the ministry. Absolutely.
By the time 2020 ended, Dr. Oz had managed something almost impressive in its scope. He'd alienated the medical community, the scientific literature, his own university, and a meaningful chunk of the public, all without ever once admitting the underlying pattern was the problem. Which raises an obvious question nobody in his orbit seemed eager to ask. If a habit of dressing up uncertainty, as certainty had already cost him this much credibility on a daytime talk show, what exactly did anyone think was going to happen when they handed that same habit a government building? The bakery, completely uninvolved in any wrongdoing, reported a real-world drop in customers within days, because that's what happens when the federal official in charge of your healthcare funding points a camera at your storefront and says the word mafia. This was not a slip of the tongue. This was the coffee bean pitch, just wearing a government badge instead of a lab coat. And it didn't stop there, because certainty, this confident doesn't know how to scale down. Within weeks, Oz was threatening to withhold Medicaid funding from entire states, announcing a 6-month moratorium on new medical equipment suppliers nationwide, because in his own words, cracking down on fraud in one state just pushes it to another, so you basically have to shut the whole country down. Minnesota sued the federal government over withheld funds. New York got hit with a 50-question audit. This is the same man doing the same thing, at a scale that would have given Senator McCaskill an aneurysm. The structural problem here isn't that Dr. Oz occasionally says something dumb.
5 years getting high and everything. She just got 3 months clean.
And what is she saying about you still being on drugs?
It's that his entire career has rewarded him, financially and professionally, every single time he chose drama over nuance. The Senate hearing didn't end his career. The BMJ study didn't end his career. Losing his own university's confidence in him didn't end his career. Every single warning sign that should have functioned as a stop sign instead functioned as a promotion, because somewhere along the way, American media and American politics both decided that confidence reads as competence, even when the two have never once been related. Why would he stop doing the thing that got him a talk show, a Senate nomination, and now control over the Medicare budget?
The first thing they would say when they woke up was that they were angry at him for saving their life because they had wanted to die.
From where he's standing, the formula has never once failed him. That's the real horror story buried under all the punchlines. It's not that one man kept being wrong about coffee beans and malaria drugs and Armenian bakeries. It's that an entire system of television producers, voters, and eventually a sitting president looked at that exact track record and decided the solution was to give him more power, not less. Which leaves us with one final, deeply uncomfortable question. If 13 years of being demonstrably, repeatedly, expensively wrong was never enough to take the microphone away from Dr. Oz, what at this point would actually be enough? Here's the part that's almost sad if you squint. There was, somewhere back in 2003, a genuinely brilliant heart surgeon who believed medicine could be warmer, more accessible, less intimidating for the average person sitting at home with a symptom they were too scared to Google.
Friends. One woman said that she lost a friend in rehab, so she doesn't want to go to rehab because she lost someone she loved.
For about 5 minutes, that idea actually worked. Oprah believed it. America believed it. Even the Emmy voters believed it, 4 separate times. It is entirely possible that somewhere underneath 3 decades of miracle pills and Senate subpoenas, that man still exists. But fantasies don't get to keep their credit just because they started out sincere. The same instinct that made Mehmet Oz a star, the absolute refusal to say we're not sure yet, is the exact instinct that turned a coffee bean into a Senate hearing, a malaria drug into a pandemic talking point, and an Armenian bakery into a federal incident.
So they knew they were overdosing.
Some of them, not all.
He didn't lose his way. He found a bigger microphone every single time, and somehow nobody along the way thought to take it back. So no, this isn't really a story about one bad TV doctor. It's a story about how far sounding certain can carry a person who's wrong roughly half the time, all the way from a daytime studio to the building that controls $1 trillion of American healthcare. America's doctor became America's quack, and then, against every available odd, America's bureaucrat. At what point do we stop calling that a redemption arc and start calling it a warning label? Like subscribe and tell us which government appointee deserves the next autopsy.